Hey up, it's Steve from that old Yorkshire Geek, and it's time to review Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 7, which was released earlier than expected. It was released on the Saturday after the previous episode, because I think they showed it at San Diego Comic-Con. So they also decided to release it, worldwide at the same time. So we've got it earlier this week. And it's the crossover episode with Lower Decks. It's called Those Old Scientists, and this is the episode I was dreading to watch because famously I don't like Lower Decks. But I really liked this episode. I thought it was really good. I'm not sure if it's my favourite episode of the season so far, but it's up there. It's up there. But I know a lot of people like this. I presume some people might not like it. But I don't know. I don't know why, because it's a lot of fun. It's a fun episode, which has been pretty much the hallmark of Season 2. They've generally been fun episodes. Right, so let's just get on with it, shall we? Let's have a look at the episode in question. So the guest stars in this are Brad Boimler, voiced by Jack Quaid, who I do believe is... Dennis Quaid's son, I think. I could be wrong, but anyway. And Beckett Mariner, who's voiced by Tawny Newsome. They're the two main characters in Lower Decks. As I said, I'm not a fan of Lower Decks, and I've not watched all of it. I think I got partway through Season 1 and decided not to watch anymore. Do you know what? I may change that now. After watching this, I could give Lower Decks another go. I suspect I still might get angry at it, though. But I might give it another go. Right, so let's get on with the episode. By the way, directed by Jonathan Frakes. Right, let's get it up, so to speak. There we go. So we start off, obviously. Hang on, I better make sure I've got it muted. There we go. So we start off, obviously, with the Star Trek Cinematic Universe logo. There we go. And we begin. With the usual previously on, and we learn about La'an's time travelling and Uhura's overworked and stressed and stuff like that. What else? What else do we learn? Also learn that La'an made a connection with Kirk on her time travelling escapades in I think that was episode 3, wasn't it, of this season. My favourite episode of the season so far. Anyway, we begin, and there we go. Those stars look animated, don't they? Because they are. So we're starting off. This is the USS Cerritos, which is a California-class starship. See, I don't even like the show, but I know the deets. It's coming into orbit off planet. I forgot the name of the planet. Something like Karumbanthon 3 or something like that. I can't bloody remember. Which has got a portal on it. By the way, I've got notes. Look, I've typed out notes. I'll probably still forget things, but I don't usually do notes. But I did with this. They've arrived at this planet, which has a portal on it, and Boimler is excited because he likes portals. There we are. This is Lower Decks, the animation style. So he's excited for this, and he wants to go down and explore. Let's move my mouse pointer out of the way. But Beckett Mariner, she's obviously not impressed. She's not into science. Then the other two come on. One's Tendi, let's go back a bit. See if we can see it. There we go. One's Tendi, the Green Orion officer, and the other is called something else, but I can't remember. I'm not a fan of Lower Decks, but he's like a cyborg, he's got cybernetic implants and stuff. But they're both scientists, so they're excited to explore this portal. And it turns out that Mariner's been put in charge of the survey expedition, and so Boimler's not happy about that, to be honest. But he still goes anyway. See there, the beam down to the planet. She says, "There's the portal. Survey." So they start looking at stuff. And Tendi says, "You do know that Orion scientists discovered this portal. And Boimler says, no, it was the USS Enterprise with Captain Pike that discovered this portal. You know, Orions are all pirates. And Tendy gets angry, saying, you know, Orions aren't all pirates. You know, somebody had to build the starships. So, because it was an Orion science vessel that discovered it originally. So that's a plot point for later on. So they're checking it out. Science and stuff. They discover there's heronium, which I've never heard of before. Probably made up for this episode. But they discover heroniums in the design of the portal. They detected it, and it's actually the fuel of the portal. You plug it in and it activates it. But they said the NX class starships used heronium in their hull because it's, you know, durable and versatile and the right shade of grey. So that's the first we've heard of that, I think, probably. Anyway, so he poses for some pictures. Does Boimler pretended to do an impersonation of Spock, but then what's his name? I'm going to have to find out his name. I can't remember. Anyway, this character here takes a holographic photograph, and it activates the portal, as we'll see. There we go. The portal's portaling. There we go. He's saying that. And there we go. Boimler gets pulled into the portal, and they all rush. Oh, I've gone too far. They all rush to help, and then we appear in live action. The portal activates. There it is. And Boimler comes out in live action, and he sees 3 people in front of him. It's number 1. Spock and somebody else. I can't remember who. I think it's La'an that's with them. Let's have a look. Yes, it's La'an. This is number 1, Spock and La'an. He says, "You all look very realistic." So, is he aware that he's an animated character? Apparently so. We'll get back to this by the end, by the way. Sorry, I just... grotty eyes. But we get back to that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention. See, I'm forgetting my notes already. When he goes into the portal, he shouts, "Remember me!" That's obviously a reference to the Next Generation episode, Remember Me, because Beverly Crusher got pulled into a portal of a similar type, a vortex. And I'm presuming that's what that's a reference to. I could be wrong, but anyway. Right, so number 1 flips open a communicator and says, "Number 1 to Enterprise, we've got a problem." And there's just a little look there, and it's cool. Right, so the credits begin, and it's done in the lower deck style. So we're seeing the Enterprise in animated form, and I've got to admit, the animated Enterprise, to me, looks better than the live action one from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'll show you why in a minute if we see it. There we go. I mean, that does look, in my opinion, that looks better, a better version of the Enterprise than what we see in the live action. Because the live action version overdoes the Aztecing, the hull plates and stuff. It goes a bit overboard with them, in my opinion, but we'll see. I'll show you an example, but I think that looks cool. Animated. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention. There we go. As we see in the Enterprise flying through space, I'm not going to see it. I'm going to miss it. Let's see if we're on the next bit. Oh, for God's sake! We see at the beginning of the lower decks, opening credits, we see the Cerritos, and they're silly starship names. The Cerritos, a space creature, sort of like suckling on the warp nacelles, and we see that in this as well. If we get to see it in here, there we go. There we go. So as you can see, there's the creature that we see from lower decks nuzzling on the or suckling, whatever the phrase is, on the Enterprise's warp nacelle, and it disappears later on. It lets go later on. Right, so I like this animated version of the opening credits. I've got to get this right now here. Right, So as the credits fade out, there we go. We see, you can't see for me. Hang on, let me move it a bit. There you see a koala there, and I'm watching it thinking, why is there a picture of a koala? I've no idea. As I said, I've not seen Lower Decks since the middle of season 1, so that meant nothing to me. So I had to look it up. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to read, if I can find it, why a koala keeps showing up in Star Trek. So this is a little bit extra. So hang on, let me get rid of that. There we go. Why a koala keeps showing up in Star Trek, including on this week's Strange New Worlds. There we go. If you've watched Those Old Scientists, Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 7, then you'll probably notice the outline of a koala hovering out in space during the opening credits. Here's the Strange New Worlds koala, and there it is. So why is this energetic outline of a friendly koala hovering out in space? The answer is that it's a specific reference to another Star Trek series airing on Paramount Plus, Star Trek Lower Decks. A koala is first referenced in the 4th episode of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1. In it, a lieutenant named O'Connor, not O'Connor, transcends to a higher plane of existence. In the process, he reveals to Ensign Tendi that the universe rests on the back of a koala. There we go, I presume that's an image from that. The idea of a celestial koala soon became a running gag on Lower Decks. It's later referenced by another ensign, by Ensign Brad Boimler. Bradwood Boimler is his full name, by the way, after a near drowning in cetacean ops. That doesn't get mentioned often, does it, in Star Trek? Stupid bloody idea. All because on some the Enterprise D blueprints they put in cetacean ops, probably for a joke. And now it's a thing. It's as bad as having, Darwin the talking dolphin in Sequest DSV. Anyway, he tells Tendi that when nearing death he saw a koala. Tendi suggests he keep that to himself. And there's cetacean ops. I saw a koala. Later we learn that this koala resides on a black mountain somewhere in the afterlife. It begins when Lieutenant Shax returns from the dead. No idea Lieutenant Shax. Is that Lieutenant Shax? Could be, I don't know. Returns from the dead and reveals what it's like in the afterlife. Shax says he went into a spiritual battleground on a black mountain. There he was forced to face 3 faceless apparitions of his father, after which the surviving father made him eat his own heart. Oh yes, that's Shax. Yeah, as I said, I'm not familiar with Lower Decks. Shax made no mention of the koala, but later that year, Lieutenant Commander Steve Stevens, not the guitarist for Billy Idol, is turned into stone. When he's brought back to life, he says he saw a koala sitting on a black mountain. Steve Stevens, Atomic Playboys. Oh, is that it? That's it. There we go. So that's the explanation for why we see a koala. That's the explanation for why we see a koala there. So there we go. So it's a deep cut if you're a Lower Decks fan, maybe, I don't know. Right, so off we go. Off we jolly well go. Right, so here we see the live action Enterprise. Let's get. It's what I mean by the Aztecing, by the way. Like I said, the ship's almost black. I know it's supposed to be coming out of the dark side of this moon or planet or whatever, but like I said, the Aztecing goes a little bit overboard, in my opinion. I mean, it's a bit crazy, to be honest. But it's still a nice ship, but I do prefer the Lower Decks animated style. But anyway, approaching Karumbath, whatever, sea, whatever it's called. I don't bloody know what it's called. So, anyway, so number 1's showing, they've beamed up Ensign Boimler, by the way. Number 1's showing Pike. His comm badge, he says it's not just a pin, he says it's a communicator as well, and you just press it like this and we hear the chirrup of the comm badge. He says, well, but ours, flipping the thing open, what does he say? Flipping it open's the best part, is what Pike says. And he says, flipping it open's the best part. Like so. Oh, he did do it. Which it is. It is the best part. Anyway, right, so where were we? So, off they go to sick bay, where Ensign Boimler's realises where he is. Says, I'm on the Enterprise with Captain Pike. And it doesn't mention Dr. Mabenga for some reason. it never mentions everybody else. It doesn't mention Laan, but we'll get back to that. It doesn't mention Mabenga. He seems to know who Chapel is, although he doesn't go overboard on her. Obviously, number one, he seems terrified of. We learn of why. He knows Ortegas for some reason. We'll get to that. And Uhura, obviously. But, he doesn't mention, obviously, he knows it's Pike's Enterprise. He doesn't mention Kirk's Enterprise. Oddly, but never mind. So it gets a bit hysterical. Pike makes a bit of a joke, and then number one appears. That was it. When he first woke up, he said, "Computer end program," which made me chortle a little bit. And then he goes and prods. Well, he doesn't actually touch him, but he goes to touch Pike. But if he were on the holodeck, he'd be able to touch him anyway, because everything's solid on the holodeck. He doesn't pass through people, even if they're holographic recreations, they do have form and solidity, don't they? Never mind. So he goes off with Laan. When he sees number one, he seems terrified of her. We learn later on, I'll say it now, what the heck. We'll learn later on, he's not actually terrified of her, because number one thinks something's going to happen to her. He thinks she's doomed, but we learn he's actually terrified of her because he's got a poster of number one on his bunk, so that's why. She thinks when she's told about it, she thinks it's a pin-up poster, but it's not. Anyway, right, so Laan's giving him the lowdown on temporal, not what not to do. Don't talk to him, don't spoil the future, etc., stuff like that. And he goes, "Oh, Worf's on her." Then he goes, "Oh, crap." But what Laan says here, she says to him, she gives him, the rules. He says, "I know the temporal rules." It says, don't speak to anybody, don't, give away future events. And then she says, "Don't form any attachments." And he says, "I'm not familiar with that one." She says, "It's advice. Don't form any attachments because it could destroy you and destroy your future and destroy, friends and loved ones and all that." And that got me thinking, is she saying that because maybe she's going to disappear from history at some point? Before Strange New Worlds ends, before Kirk takes over, is she going to be erased from history somehow? Because that'd explain then, wouldn't it, why she's never mentioned when they find Khan. Could be. That's just my view. Right, so that's that bit over with. So there they are. I like his uniform, by the way. It looks good in live action, I must admit. And it is black. It's a black. Not black. It is silver. Is his pin badge? It's not black. Brian. Anyway, there's the Enterprise again. Cool shot. It is a really cool shot. That's a good. That'd be a great desktop with that, wouldn't it? That's a lovely shot. Although, as I said, the Enterprise is a bit dark. Over the top with the Azteci. Anyway, here we go. But in is this the conference room or is it the captain's office? I don't know what they call this room. Obviously, Pike sits there from time to time when he's having meetings. But it's also got this big conference table. So what's it classed as? I'm sure somebody knows. But he sees Pike's saddle. Is it Tango's saddle? I know I say that every time we see it, but he can't resist getting on it. And as he puts his leg over it, he goes, "Riker." Obviously the Riker manoeuvre, which is funny. And there we go. That's he says it, Riker. And we go as he swings his leg over, because that's the Riker manoeuvre, in it? When Riker used to swing his leg over chairs to sit on chairs backwards. And if you notice, also another Riker manoeuvre that I've noticed, when Riker goes through a door, he always looks the opposite way to the direction he's going. Good like that. And then, if you've ever noticed that, I don't know. I have. Right, so Uhura pops up out of nowhere. He says, "What you doing?" He says, you're Uhura," and all that. And she's there to work. Hang on, gone too far. She's there to work, and he's saying, "Oh, you're amazing," and all that. He says, I forgot what his name now. Mariner. He says Mariner'd be freaking out now, because Mariner's a big Uhura fan. Oh, yeah, when we saw the animated bit at the beginning, she said she was a Uhura fan because Uhura had a life outside of work. But then we're finding out in this episode, obviously, at the moment she hasn't. She's overworked. She's not getting enough free time. Right, so he gets called to the transporter. He don't get called to like Transporter Room 3 or the Transporter Room, just the transporter. So they beam down to back to whatever the hell the planet's called. And the Spock tells them... Oh, I forgot to mention. Oh, no, it's in this bit. I thought it was earlier on, but it's in this bit. Spock tells them that there's enough heronium in the portal for one trip. By the way, he asked them what they were doing. Hang on, gone too far. He asked them what they were doing, and he says, I was standing here, and is it Rutherford? Something like that, Rutherford, the other engineer, in the cyborg chap, were taking photos, a holographic photo, and then the portal activated. He also mentioned that they detected heronium in it, and Spock says, presumably from here, and then they open up this little flap, and there's somewhere to put heronium in. So, and then Boimler says something. I can't actually remember what he says, but then this happens. Spock has a good old laugh, much to Boimler's distress. Good face. And then he immediately goes back to being, Vulcan. And he said, whatever you said, I can't remember what he said actually. He said, it seemed ludicrous to him, whatever he said, but I can't remember what he said. Then Boimler says to Dr. M'Benga, who he calls M'Benga. It's M'Benga. It is, honest. He says to him, is this new, or is Spock always like that? And he says, M'Benga says, no, this is definitely new. Anyway, so Spock says there's enough for one trip. Then what happens? Then they get called back up to the ship because an Orion ship appears in orbit. So they go to yellow alert, shields up and all that, because they think it's pirates, because, it's Orion, so they think all Orions are pirates. They'd encountered Orions previously, by the way. I think in season 1 it was, wasn't it? Serene Squall, that episode. They had Orion pirates in that. I think that was Serene Squall. Anyway, so they beam up the landing party before they have a chance to send him back. Boimler says he has reason to believe that this is an Orion science vessel, and everybody scoffs at him. But before that, when he comes onto the bridge, he's like gasping at being on the bridge of the Enterprise, and he says, "Dash nothing," and then La'an says, he says NCC 1701-nothing, and La'an says, what would come after the dash? And Una goes. So that were a nice little one. So anyway, it tells them that this is an Orion science vessel, and obviously they don't believe him. But he's quite adamant, and he says to Pike later, in a few minutes, he says to Pike that one of his friends is an Orion officer, and her grandmother's on the ship, so they can't fight it because they'd affect the future. But before that, they have a little chat with the captain of, I think it's the Duval they call the ship, maybe named after Robert Duval. I don't think so. A chat with the captain of the ship, and he says that, you know, they're on a scientific mission, blah blah blah. But then they just beam up the portal for some reason. Don't know why. They just beam it up and then warp out of there. So obviously Boimler, you know, thinks he's made a mess of it again, and Pike looks dejected. But it doesn't explain why the Orions just beamed up the portal. Did they know it were there? But whether they're specifically for the portal, I've no idea. They just beam it up and warp away with no explanation. Anyway, so then we go to this Pike's office, captain's office / conference room, whatever the hell it is. Pike's wondering if he's made a mistake and letting Boimler run around. But they've got to just carry on. Meanwhile, Boimler's in 10 forward, the rec room, whatever you want to call it. Looking at a pad. Then Ortegas and the lovely Jess Bush, who looks gorgeous in this episode. I'm going to say it in every episode, I don't care. Confront him. And they give him a bit of a ribbing to tell him, you know, not to spoil anything from the future and all that. And he should delete whatever he's doing on the pad. And then Chapel, Jess Bush, asks him if he's feeling all right, because she said he could be suffering from chronoton poisoning, which, you know, could cause nausea. You know, have you started vomiting yet? I think she's pulling his leg a bit. But it got me wondering, you know, chronoton poisoning. Last week we had deuterium poisoning. Is everything poisonous in the 23rd century? It seems to be. But I think she's just joking with him. I don't think he really has chronoton poisoning. So they're just pulling his leg, and then he lets slip about the captain's birthday. It's Pike's birthday on Friday, and they don't know about this. And they said to him, "How do you know it's the captain's birthday?" And because they mentioned movie night, and he said, "Oh, you're doing that for the captain's birthday?" And he said, "How do you know the captain's birthday?" He said, "Oh, it's a holiday in my time." And he goes, "Oh crap, you know, let slip something else." So then they decide to have a surprise birthday party for the captain. But in this exchange as well, we also learn about how lucky he feels that they are living in this time, the 23rd century, apparently with a golden age of exploration. I didn't know it was, but apparently it was. Probably the Constitution class starship going out and did their 5-year missions. That must mean it's the golden age of exploration. He's got to get back home. So she goes, says, "I've got to go now. Watch out for those chronotons." And then she goes, she's going to meet Spock. See if we can get to it. There we go. She walks up to Spock. Oh, see, I've gone too far now. There we go. Spock's smiling again, freaking out Boimler. And obviously that's going to get people angry, seeing Spock smiling so much in this episode. But it is explained. Then there must be a passage of time here, because obviously she went off with Spock, and then next scene, you know, like that, we see Chapel just coming out of a door and Boimler running up to her and saying he's got to talk to her. And then he's asking about Spock, and he says he's worried that he's messed it up, because Spock in his time is known for never smiling, super serious, and if he's done anything to alter the way Spock is, it could have serious repercussions, because Spock did a lot of amazing things. And it turns out, Chapel says, "Oh no, it was like this before you arrived." Boimler's kind of relieved, but then we see he doesn't know why Spock's acting like this, and then we see Chapel's face goes a bit heartbroken, as we'll see in a minute if it shows us. There's an expression that I just immediately fell in love with her. I did, just this little pained expression. For God's sake, Not that I can find the bloody one. But she realises it's her that's. Oh, see, I've gone too far. I'll never get on. There we go. Anyway, this little pained expression. There she is. She's absolutely gorgeous. I can't get over it. Anyway, so it's her that's causing him to experiment with his human emotions. So that's the reason. And he says, is it just a phase he's going through? So obviously Chapel thinks their relationship is just a phase in Spock's life. And she says, I never thought it'd continue forever. But it obviously hurts her a little bit that Spock in the future is going to become all emotionless again and Vulcan. Anyway, right, so they're on the bridge. Spock says he find no way to track the Orions, but then Boimler says, I know how to track the Orions with his future knowledge. But Nell said, well, you can't because that would spoil things. He says, well, what if you just didn't watch? So number one says, well, we can't do that, can we? So they all decided just to turn around and not watch what he's doing. There they are, not watching. And he's under the console, all wires and optical cables or whatever, switching them around. And then he says, there, done, hear a noise. And Ortega says, well, future boy's done it. So they found a way to track the Orions now. And that's what I mean, overdoing the Aztecing. This is what's called Aztecing. That's supposed to look like hull plates. Gone a bit crazy, hasn't it? Too many. There's too many. But off it goes. Oh no, it catches up with it immediately. So they've caught up with the Orions. And I think this is where he's talking about Tendy's great grandmothers on the ship. So he says you've got to use diplomacy, which is what you're famous for. So they talk again, and they decide. By the way, it was mentioned earlier on that they were on the way. They're supposed to be going to Setlik 2. They've got a hold full of I forgot the bloody call it now. Let's have a look. Notes. Tritriticale, that's it. They've got a hold full of Tritriticale. It's the only amount of its kind. It's the only Tritriticale in the galaxy or whatever, because it was especially made for the colonists, for their biome on Setlik 2. Remember, we learn of Setlik 3, the Setlik 3 massacre in Next Generation, don't we? Because Chief O'Brien was there for that, and the Cardassians massacred a Federation colony, didn't they? But Tritriticale is this grain. Remember in Trouble with Tribbles, we'd heard of Quadratriticale, which was another experimental grain, wasn't it? But anyway, they're carrying Tritriticale, and they decide to trade, because apparently trading with the Orions is a sign of respect. If they want to trade with you, it means they respect you or whatever. So they agree to swap the Tritriticale for the portal. So that's that done with. I don't know what they're going to do with these colonists on Setlik 2 if they're just giving away the only Tritriticale ever, in the galaxy. But never mind. So that's that sorted. They think that's sorted. So they go back to Karumbathsi, whatever the hell it's called, with the portal. This is when Spock says there's enough for one trip, enough Heronium for one trip, so they say goodbye. The portal activates, and there we go. Let's go back a bit. The portal activates, and before they can say goodbye and step in, Mariner bursts through, saying, "I've done it! Hey! I've come to save you." And then the portal shuts down. Remember, there were only enough Heronium for one trip, so now that both of them are stuck there now, Mariner and Boimler. So, they've just doubled the problem. By the way, it's a good job that the actors that play both Mariner and Boimler kind of look like they're animated characters. It's a good job they didn't pick one of the others, isn't it? One of the other main actors. Like Jerry. I forgot his bloody name now. O'Connell. Is it Jerry O'Connell? who plays Ransom, because he doesn't look nothing like his character, does he? Anyway, so they're lucky in that regard. And she's got a hell of a figure, by the way, as Tawny news. But enough of that. Enough of my dirty old manness. Anyway, so she's kind of excited to be there. But Pike's log, he mentions their problems have doubled. They've got 2 travellers from the future now, and no way to get them back home. So they're in a meeting in the conference room / captain's office. What else? Have any other notes? Yes, Mariner. While they were on the planet, Mariner just in the background conversation. She says, "Oh, ranks on the sleeve." I don't know about that. Obviously, they have their ranks on the collars, don't they? But in those old scientists here, they have them on the sleeve, don't they? Right, in this bit now, they're talking away. But everybody can hear what they're saying. There's a lot of that in this episode where the people are talking away from another group, and they can hear them. They keep mentioning that, and they mentioned the Bell riots, because that was another time travel episode in Deep Space Nine, wasn't it, when Sisko went back and became Gabriel Bell in the Bell riots. So they mentioned that. Anyway, in this part, Mariner says there's no more Heronium. There's no more Heronium anywhere in the quadrant, it's mentioned, and there hasn't been any for over 100 years. And Mariner says, "Well, can't we just make some?" And Spock says, "Well, yes, they can. We can try and synthesize some Heronium." And Hot Spock, as Mariner calls him, because she says he looks really attractive, so he calls him Hot Spock. So that's what they're going to do, try and synthesise some there. She's very pleased with herself because she's got the right idea. And she says she wants to go and help Uhura with the translation. So they say, Pike says, "What more damage can you do? Go for it." So she's going to help Uhura. And Boimler's going to go help Spock create some Heronium. Off they go. I think he smiles again. I think he smiles again here. There we go. I think he does a little... I don't know what he jokes about. But he smiles again, and Mariner also says, "That's terrifying." Right, here we go. Let's look at that. Oh, right figure, aren't you? Right, hourglass figure. Anyway. Boimler saying, they're in trouble, what if we can't create any Heronium? We're going to be trapped here. We'll have to live somewhere, find somewhere out of the way, off the grid. Maybe Gravette Island. Don't mention that. We'll have to live somewhere off the grid. And Mariner says, "No, I don't do off the grid. I need the grid." He says, "Yes, I know." So he's terrified of that. But then number 1 appears. He sees number 1. And then and does this funny walk away. I think he does this in the animated series, I think. But there we go, look, it's a funny walk. Which actually made me laugh. Right. And this is where Mariner tells... because she says, does number 1, that... am I doomed? Why is everybody terrified of me? Or why is Boimler specifically terrified of me? Am I doomed? And Mariner says, no, it's because he's got a poster of her in his bunk. And she says, is it a pin-up? And she doesn't tell her. She says, I don't want to know. There's number 1. So... Right, so then we cut to Uhura's doing the translating with good old books and stuff. Obviously Mariner hasn't had any translation experience. She just wanted to meet Uhura, so she's telling her all about herself, telling Uhura all about Uhura. Is this badass translating chick and all that. And Uhura's saying, I'm surprised you even know about me. I'm 22, I haven't done anything yet. So we learn Uhura 22 in this. Obviously, she's going to become a legend. Then what? Oh yeah. In this part, I was hoping that Mariner might mention something about her hair, saying in the holographic images we have of you, you had more hair, and you know, and the mini skirts. She doesn't mention the mini skirts either, but never mind. So, she tells her that she needs to take a break, and Uhura says, "I haven't got time to take a break." So she, Mariner, brings up Starfleet regulations. So she says, Starfleet regulation, I don't know, section 48, whatever, I don't know. It says Starfleet officers must take regular meal breaks at all times, or at regular times, whatever. And Uhura says, "You know Starfleet codes?" No, so of course she does. She's a Starfleet officer. But then I'm thinking, are the Starfleet codes the same? You know, 120 years in the future as they are in the 23rd century. I suppose the basic ones are like that. But, I suppose there'll be new ones, won't there, that Uhura won't know about. But anyway, so she says, "I could report you." So they go to 10 forward. 10 forward. Right, so there they are. So she's made them Orion Hurricanes. This is a drink. But she says, "We don't have any," I forgot what they call it, Delac. Is it Delac? Something like that. It is an Orion drink. We haven't got any of that. So she's had to use something else. But she says, if it had been Delac, whatever they call it, you know, it'd blow your minds. We see why later on. What else? Oh yeah, see if we can land on this one. Bet we can't. No, we can't. She's on a pad. See if it shows us. Uhura's looking at a pad. See, I want to. There she's looking down at the pad. Come on, show us the pad, for Christ's sake. Was it earlier on? Anyway, this pad that Uhura's looking at, that you know, it's not landing on for some weird bloody reason. Come on, show us it. Ain't gonna, is it? There we go. Ooh, right. It shows Bajoran, and oh, there we go. It shows the time portal. Oh, there we go. Can't read that. Krulmuth B, whatever. But we see she's looking at different symbols. They're the symbols that's on the portal. Maybe they're ancient symbols, you know, like on the Stargate. Is there 39 of them? But obviously she's checking. She looks at Bajoran, and then she looks at another one, and on it mentions Bajor and Cardassia, and I was thinking, were they known in the 23rd century? Obviously they were known in the 24th century because, you know, Cardassia occupied Bajor and all that happened after that, but that's like mid to late 24th century, isn't it? But apparently it's known now. Bajor and Cardassia are both known because they're both shown up on maps, apparently, in Strange New Worlds. I never noticed, but according to the memory alpha, they are known in the 23rd century. So, but that was news to me. Right. But then she shows the symbols to Edica Ortegas, who's there with them. Ortega says, "I know these symbols. She was at Starbase Earhart, and a Nausicaan was trying to sell her a Domjot set on Starbase Earhart, and she saw these same sort of symbols, and they're like ancient Nausicaan, you know, not just old Nausicaan, but ancient Nausicaan, really old." And so Uhura says, "All right, the Nausicaan, you're a genius." He says, "I know why." He says, "Well, that's what it is. It's ancient Nausicaan symbols." If you've heard of Starbase Earhart, that's because that's where Captain Picard, when he was an ensign or whatever, Ensign Picard or Cadet Picard, whatever he was, got stabbed through the heart by Nausicaans in the episode Tapestry. So where he got his artificial heart after that, didn't he? Did Picard. So obviously Nausicaans like Starbase Earhart because they were there, you know, 100 years earlier. But there we go. Right, so that's that. Yeah, that's it. So right. Oh, next. So she sussed it out. It's Nausicaan script on the portal. She says, so they're all happy with themselves. Then it cuts to Spock and Boimler trying to recreate the Heronium in what I presume is a science lab. So they're doing all this, and Spock mentions that Chapel mentioned Boimler's discussion with her. She didn't go into details apparently, but it seems Boimler's concerned with his experiments with human emotions, and Boimler suggests that the future needs Vulcan Spock because of what he's going to do. But Spock says, well, I can't deviate from what I feel my future would be or should be. I can't deviate my because of what you've said. I can't change what I'm going to do because that might alter the future. So he's just going to carry on regardless. But could this be one of the last times that we see him smiling basically and experimenting with emotion deliberately? I think he does one last smile. But could this be the last time? We will see. So anyway, they're doing this Heronium. Goes wrong, it blows up. So they've failed. They haven't created any Heronium, but they've blown up the lab. So then Boimler goes down to engineering for some reason. Don't know why. Looking at the warp core. Speaks to Pellier. Have a look at my notes. Yeah, we learned that Pellier's thousands of years old. I think we knew that anyway, didn't we? But I think it just said before that she was, really old. I don't think it said exactly how old, but she says she's thousands of years old, and she has this nice little bit of dialogue where she talks about heroes and stuff and people that she's met in her thousands of years. The heroes that she's met, often they were, they didn't count themselves as heroes, and they were quite, not boring, but quite normal people. And the ones that became heroes said that they didn't know if the hero in them came out or if just the hero became them, if you know what I mean. It's a nice little bit of dialogue. But then she says, all Boimler has to do anyway is just find a time travel device and go back to the future and stop screwing up the timeline. And for some reason I thought, well, why has Boimler not mentioned the Guardian of Forever or slingshotting around the star? You'd think he'd know about this and he'd blurt it out. I know he's not supposed to be saying anything, but you'd think he'd blurt it out. He's blurted out enough stuff, hasn't he? At least the Guardian of Forever. You'd thought he'd have said something, or started saying something, wouldn't you? Thought he'd have said something like, why can't we use the Guardian of... Oh, never mind. And they said, what? Obviously, they haven't encountered that yet in this time, although it is a separate timeline. Anyway, never mind. So that's what he's got to do. He's got to get he thinks he's got to get the time portal back. So he goes to a shuttle. Goes to the shuttle bay. In a minute. There we go. There we see. There's a lot of shuttle activity for some reason. I thought when this guy thought, he's taking a shuttle and he's going off to do something. No, he's not yet. Just a lot of shuttle activity for some reason. Don't know where that's going. But he's on the shuttle. There we go. With a flashlight, and he comes across Mariner, and so they're gonna send a signal because the comm system on the shuttle is separate from the comm system of the rest of the ship, so they can send a concealed signal to the Orions to try and get the portal back, because he wants to get the grain, not the portal. He wants to get the grain back. They've got the portal, haven't they? He wants to get the grain back because he wants to help people. He's fed up of doing the right thing temporally wise. Now he just wants to help people, because those people on Setlik 3 are going to starve, so he's got to get the grain back. So they decide to do that, send this signal, but they get caught by La'an. There we go. She says, I never get caught, and then immediately La'an's there with the phaser pointing at them, so she marches them to the captain's quarters. Obviously he's cooking, that's all he does. Captain Cook, not Captain Pike. Yes, I know I said that last time. Excuse me. Right. Sorry, I was just checking my cat. She's all curled up asleep down there, looking absolutely adorable. Anyway. So, he says, he talks to him, he says, can I speak to them alone? And he talks about the words going round that Boimler's encouraging the crew to hold a surprise party for Pike's birthday. And Boimler says, well, you should enjoy all the birthdays you have, because obviously Boimler and Mariner know about what's going to happen to Pike. He's going to have his accident with his delta radiation and end up in his chair with his all that. They don't know, Pike knows, so they're trying to be diplomatic about it, and Pike says, I know what you're talking about. So he says that's not the reason I don't want a party. He says the reason is his dad, his father. He never got on with his father, and he says he hated him at times. But this is going to be the first birthday, and he died when Pike were younger, and they never reconciled their differences. And this is the first birthday now where Pike's actually going to be older than his dad was when his dad died. So what he was going to do when all this was over, he was going to go to Setlik 2, take a little bit of time to himself, and go fishing on one of Setlik 2's ice moons. Presumably they have atmosphere, and that's that. Spend some alone time with his dad, so to speak, the memory of his dad. So that's that. Then they mention, what did they mention now? I've got it here. Oh, I forgot to mention when he encountered Mariner in the shuttle, he went, "Holy Q!" And she said, "Don't mention the Q. They haven't met him yet." In this time, they've got this whole Trelane thing going on, which is obviously a reference to the Squire of Gothos. And they mentioned the difference between the dialogue styles. They said, "I've noticed everybody speaks really slowly and quietly." Which they're doing Star Trek in live action, but in Lower Decks it's all very frenetic and fast talking and all that. We were also told that Boimler dressed up as Pike for Halloween, and he had to reconfigure his jaw or something. He said it were a process. So then somehow the name of the NX-01 gets mentioned, and I can't remember how. Oh yeah, that's it. Pike says, I think I know how you feel being on this Enterprise, and Pike says, I know how I'd feel meeting Captain Archer on the NX-01. And then Boimler remembers what were earlier on in the episode when they first encountered the portal, and when they said Heronium was used in the NX class ships. He says, "Oh, the NX-01 that used Heronium in its hull." So, and he says, "I think I know how I can get us home." So the next scene, this is them in the conference room / Pike's office, and they're going to tell their plan. Boimler was going to say a limerick for some reason, I don't know why, but then Mariner, he tells Mariner to just explain, and so they explain that the NX class used Heronium in its hull, so they can use the Heronium from an NX class to power the portal. And I think Ortegas or La'ana, one of them, says so we just have to dig up an NX class ship from mothballs and get a part of its hull. It says, no, we've got some here. And so we find out that the tradition is they use a part of the previous ship to carry the name of in this case Enterprise. A piece of the previous vessel called Enterprise is one of the first components added to the new Enterprise. So they've actually got a piece of the NX-01 on the NCC 1701 Enterprise. And luckily for them, it's a piece that has Heronium in. It's not a piece of the hull, because they said they used Heronium in the hull, but it's not in the hull, it's in the underneath the deck of engineering for some reason. But anyway, they can use that to power the portal. So they head down to engineering. There we go. Pull it out. Pellier says, what are you doing to my floor? I've got to walk on that. And Spock says, it is logical that other people walk on it as well. So I thought he was being logical now. So they get the, it's just, like I say, a cylinder. So obviously that's got heronium in. It's not a part of the hull, is it? I don't even know what it is. So they get that anyway. And they obviously extract the heronium from it. And there's a few NX-01 name drops here. Ortegas mentions Mayweather, if you remember, was the pilot, whatever, what they call, helmsman of the Enterprise NX-01. And Uhura mentions Hoshi Sato, who was the communications officer, and who invented the Universal Translator. So we've got a couple of mentions there, and there's them being like that. He says, oh, crikey, we're sounding like them, and then cut to them. Anyway. Right, so they've got the heronium now. So they've got to go back to the planet and just use it to get home. So they get on the transporter. By the way, Boimler, it's explained that his poster of number 1 isn't a pin-up. She's not in a swimsuit or whatever, which would be amazing. But it's a recruitment poster, and he says it's got on it, ad astra per aspera, which we learned about earlier on in the season at her trial, at Una's trial, to the stars through hardship, or whatever it means. And Una says they put that on the poster because it was a recruitment poster for Starfleet, and he says she's the reason he joined Starfleet, and he says ad astra as whatever. And so she says, I'm deeply troubled that you've shared that with me because of all the temporal problems, but thanks anyway. She winks at him. So that's his trip worth it in his eyes. Oh, and then Spock says, live long and prosper. And then as the beam away, he goes, I'll live and you live it. And then the beam away. So we saw that in the trailer, but it was still amusing. Right, so they beam down and they find the Orions have arrived. Part of the message got through that they were sending. La'an said it had been blocked by Uhura, but obviously part of the message had got through from the shuttle. So they've arrived because they wanted to do a deal. Did Boimler for the grain back? And but they talk about. They said that the truth is these are it's a time portal. And these two are from the future. We've got to get them home. And Boimler says, Orions in this time, in the 23rd century, Orions are misunderstood. In the 24th century, Orions, we know Orions serve in Starfleet. One of their best friends is an Orion. Her grandmother serves on this captain's ship. And they say her name. He says, I have a crewman called. It's like Astrea Tandy. How did you know that? He says, well, from the future. And then Pike says, okay, what if we say that it was the Orions that discovered this portal? And the captain says, that's all I ever wanted. So a nice little moment. So they depart, the Orions. And then, so they're going to go home now. They're going to use the heronium. By the way, it's not mentioned. Did the Nausicaans build this portal, or did they find it? The ancient Nausicaans. Were the ancient Nausicaans more advanced than the Nausicaans we see now? Because the ones we see now are essentially predators, aren't they? With the fangs and stuff, and mandibles. They don't seem that, obviously they've got warp travel and stuff, but they don't seem the kind to build time portals, to be completely honest. So did they just find it and scroll on it in Nausicaan, this is a time portal? Or did they invent it? I don't know, but it doesn't tell us. Anyway, so yeah, they're going to go home, they activate the portal, then we hear, I think it's Rutherford and Tendi on the other side saying, yeah, we're coming through, and they say, no, don't. So, but anyway, they go back. They go back through, say goodbye to the captain and all that. And that's it then. They go back through. They're back to being animated again. And Boimler tells Tandy that it was the Orions that discovered the portal. She went, I know, I told you. And then they say, they talk about her great-grandmother's name, Astrea Tandy. So how do you know that? So they don't say. So then they go back up to the ship, back up to the Cerritos, and we see the poster that Boimler's got. There it is. Ad Astra per Aspera. Hang on, where's me? There we go. Join Starfleet, and there's number 1 and the Enterprise, well, the Constitution class ship. And then Ransom comes in, voiced by Jerry O'Connell. I think he's the first officer of the Cerritos, isn't he? I think. Remember, the captain of the Cerritos is her mother, or at least it was when I started watching it. I don't know because I stopped halfway through season 1. I will have to change that. I'm going to watch it. Anyway, he says, "Oh, number 1, eh? She's the hottest first officer in Starfleet history," which could very well be true, to be honest. I don't know. Can't count Kira, because although she was Cisco's first officer, she wasn't part of Starfleet, was she? But she was kind of hot as well. Have you had any other hot number 1s? I can't think of any off the top of my head. Anyway, right. So that's that bit. Yes, and Ransom tells them that the captain wanted to send cadets down to check on the portal, because obviously it's totally unimportant. But Mariner, pitched for her to go down, and so Boimler says, "Oh, you did that just so I could get down to see this portal," because she obviously knew he loves portals, but she says, "No, I didn't do it for that at all," because they can't be nice to each other, can they? By the way, have you noticed the aspect ratio change? In the animated one, it's full screen, 16:9. In live action, it's got the black bars. It's in the cinematic thing. I don't know, the 238:1 or whatever. I don't know what it's called. So there's that aspect change. Anyway, so then we see the outside of the Cerritos as it's going through at proper warp speed. Not this silly Doctor Who type hyperspace nonsense that we see in Strange New Worlds and other Kurtzman trek. There we go. There we see the Enterprise in animated form. So I'm thinking, oh, crikey, right. But it still looks better than the live action one, doesn't it? And we see they're animated now. For some reason. But this is the surprise party. Pike says, "Why weren't you surprised when we all went, surprise?" And says, "Well, kind of knew it were coming." So they're all there drinking proper Orion Hurricanes, because they got some of that Delac, whatever it's called, from the Orion captain to make them with. And they're all saying, "Why does everybody look two-dimensional?" So we're learning that Orion Hurricanes make it look like you're an animated person. Spock can make his arm all bendy. Ortegas is worrying why her eyes are so big, and all that. So gone too far. So do Orion Hurricanes make you look like you're an animated character? So does that mean that in the 24th century, at least on the Cerritos, they all drink these Orion Hurricanes every day, so that's why everything looks animated? I've no idea. Have we any other notes, by the way? Yes, I forgot to mention. On the Cerritos, when they got back, Boimler says it was nice to visit the TOS era. Obviously, that stands for the original series. But then, Mariner says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Oh, it's those old scientists." It's something that Ransom says when he's talking about that era, those old scientists. And I thought, that's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? To give it that, those old scientists. They weren't really known for being scientists, were they, in the 23rd century, to be completely honest. The galaxy was kind of a bit like the Wild West, wasn't it, back then? Compared to what it is in the 24th century, which is even mentioned in episode in Voyager. I think they even mentioned. I think it was in the flashback episode where I think it was flashback, or an episode where they mentioned the 23rd century and Kirk and Sulu and all that, saying they were a little faster on the draw with the phasers, and they'd all be booted out of Starfleet these days. But they call them those old scientists, which is obviously the name of the episode. Checking me notes. But anyway, that's it. That's the end of the episode, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And you know what? It's the only episode this season I've watched more than once. So that says something, doesn't it? But it's still not going to get a higher score for that. Because, yes, that it ends then. There we go. So, yes, there we go. So, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So let me get rid of that. And get rid of that. So, there we go. So, Those Old Scientists. It was a good episode, and I'm going to give that 8 out of 10, same as last week. Not give it any more, because I didn't think, I didn't enjoy it that much. I won't give it a 9, because a 9's a little bit too high for it, I think. So I'll give it an 8, which is a good score. Right. Next week's episode, I've got it here somewhere, is called Under the Cloak of War. So I'm guessing that's either something to do with Romulans or perhaps Klingons. Probably Romulans, though. I don't know. We will see. So with 3 episodes left. By the way, the next episode is next Thursday. They haven't just brought this episode forward from next Thursday and we're going to miss a week. The next episode is next Thursday. Then we've got Subspace Rhapsody, which is a musical episode. Hopefully that'll be entertaining. And then the final episode is called Hegemony. Is it Hegemony? I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Hegemony, isn't it? Which I presume is a Gorn episode, because the Gorn Hegemony. So there we go. So we'll call it a draw at that. Yes, Those Old Scientists, really good episode. Maybe my favourite episode of this season so far, which is odd because I was dreading it. It's up there with episode 3 of this season. The Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I can't really separate them. But I give it an 8 out of 10. It's really entertaining, and it's the only episode I've watched twice. So there you go. Right, we will leave it there. So, thanks for watching, wherever you are. Look after each other, and until next time, I'll see thee.